After the end of World War II, in May 1945, thousands of Slovenian anti-communist civilians and members of the Slovene Home Guard, or Domobranci, fled Slovenia as the Yugoslav Partisan forces, or communists, took full control of the country. As the German front collapsed and the German army retreated, the former Home Guard units, as well as many civilians, including families, clergy, intellectuals, many children, and others who feared reprisals, retreated northward from central and southern Slovenia, mainly through Ljubelj. They moved in columns through the northern portion of Slovenia called Carinthia, crossing the Karavanke mountains, going through the Ljubelj tunnel into southern Austria. Their goal was to escape communist rule and avoid arrest, execution, or imprisonment. They expected all of these based on the former and previous partisan actions that were already occurring in areas where communists had taken over in Yugoslavia. Several 100,000 people made their way through the mountains north, not just Slovenians, through the Ljubelj tunnel, then to Austria, where then they found the British in a town called Vetrinj or Viktring. Upon reaching Austria, most of the refugees requested protection from the British forces from the communists, believing that the British would treat them as refugees under international law. Many were concentrated in areas or camps around Vetrinj or Viktring and other locations in British-controlled Carinthia in Austria. The refugees explicitly asked for asylum or protection from forced return to Yugoslavia. Under international law, there is no question that the former Slovene Home Guards should have been classified as refugees. First of all, they voluntarily sought out the British and asked for protection. Secondly, they had not fought the British, only the communists, so they could not be considered prisoners of war. Thirdly, they were no longer the Slovene Home Guards. On May 1, 1945, they had all become soldiers in the newly formed Slovenian National Army and confirmed their prior oath to the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. That meant that they could not be repatriated to the Socialist Republic of Yugoslavia, since they were not citizens of that country. Despite these expectations, the British authorities soon decided to forcibly repatriate the Home Guards, or the Slovene National Army, as well as many civilians, to Yugoslavia in late May and early June 1945. They were handed over to the Yugoslav communist authorities, often under the pretext that they were being sent to northern Italy. This ruse is recorded in the British archives. The British archives also record a complaint from their command that there were too many refugees for them to manage. They needed an expedited end to their dilemma. In this page from the British archives, we can read that the Slovenian refugees were informed by a British first officer that they would all be sent to northern Italy by train. This assurance increased the refugees' compliance with boarding the trains at Bleiburg.
And just so we could get that Bleiburg in the same frame. Are you ready?
Ja, brez mikrofona lahko? No, zdaj smo prišli na postajo Drveša vas, to je postaja, ki je zraven Pliberka. Sem so pripeljali domobrance, vse z Vetrinja. Se pravi, v Vetrinju so jih naložili na kamione in jih s kamionov potem pripeljali sem. En del domobrancev. Drug del domobrancev so pa tudi v Vetrinju naložili, pa v drugo smer peljali, proti Podrožci. Se pravi, tisti, ki so se iz Podrožcev skozi tunel na Jesenice, Kranj, Škofja Loka, Ljubljana, Šentvit, ti so bili pa se prišli do sem. No, tukaj so jih potem pričakali, partizani so bili skriti tudi, da jih niso najprej videli. In šele, ko so se naložili, ko so jih začeli nalagati na vlake, so potem prišli še partizani in potem je bilo jasno, kako je. Ne. No in takrat je Janez Janeš, ko je gotovo, da resnično jih vračajo, skočil v travo, ki je bila tukaj blizu, oziroma pravi rž, in pobegnil, oziroma potem se vrnil nazaj v Celovec in tudi v Vetrinj. Tragično recimo je tudi to, da ko so jih recimo peljali naše fante, slovenske domobrance, ko so peljali na postajo, recimo v Podrožco, je tam na železniški postaji bil tudi en Slovenc je delal. In ta Slovenc jim je povedal, vrnili vas bodo v Slovenijo. In mu niso verjeli. Zdelo se jim je tako nemogoče, da bi Angleži jih tako izdali in jih dali partizanom v roke. No, ampak pač tako je bilo, šli so gor, tudi konje so imeli s sabo in ko so skušali konje naložiti, konji so čutili ta strah, konji niso hoteli iti na vlak, so se upirali, ker so pač slutili, začutili čisto, da je nekaj narobe. No in od tu so jih potem od 27. maja do 31. maja potem z vlaki odpeljali v Slovenijo, se pravi Dravograd, Slovengradec, to so kraji, ki se bomo mi danes tudi peljali mimo, in potem vse do pač še Mislinja, Velenje in potem do Celja in na to Teharje. Nekatere so pa od tu odpeljali celo tudi v Maribor, in potem iz Maribora ravno tako v smrt. Toliko mogoče na kratko, zdaj te postaje, kot vidite, je to danes postaje nobenega obeležja o tej tragiki. Tu ne boste našli nobenega znaka, nobenega sporočila, kaj se je tukaj dogajalo, kaj se je zgodilo. Kar meni osebno se mi zdi pač zelo tragično, ker tu so bile res, se je izpisala ena tragika slovenskega naroda. Velika tragika. Tako mogoče na kratko, zdaj pa še gospa.
Hi, I'm Marian Gurjup. My father was a Domobranci, Jože Gurjup, and he told me how he was here and that word had already come back that they were killing everybody who was on the train who went back to Slovenia. So twice he was caught, twice he was put on the train, and twice he jumped the train and escaped, and that's how he survived.
Thank you. In May 1945, after the war in Yugoslavia and Slovenia was over, many anti-communist people fled, not just Slovenia, but Yugoslavia, and the communists went up to Austria. They were repatriated by the British, given to the Yugoslav communist forces. And they came down here, many of them through Celje. Many of those were Slovene Home Guards. Among the civilians that were forcibly sent through Celje were two of my uncles who were 15 and 16 years old, who had not fought in any army. They were paraded around the town, around here in Celje. They were beaten by people threw stones at them, and many of the men with them were then later taken to be tortured and murdered in places like Hudayama. That's it.
Whoa. Yeah, it's pretty dark.
In his outstanding book, My Life Under Totalitarianism, the former partisan and writer Petr Staric wrote about his encounter with my uncle Tina Velikonia. Staric had fought with the partisans. He was then serving in the Yugoslav army right here in Celje. And in his book, he recorded an encounter he had with my uncle Tina Velikonia. He recalls seeing that there were children being paraded along with the men who were supposedly enemies of the people. And he later came to know Dr. Tina Velikonia because he was his surgeon. And Petr Staric said at that time that he had a revelation. He had fought for Yugoslavia, for the right of the people, for freedom. And then when he saw people torturing, pelting rocks at these young men, he thought, what was this for? This is not what I fought for. And he changed sides.
Once back in Yugoslavia, over 100,000 people were executed without trial and thrown into concealed mass graves, which remained hidden until after 1990. Thousands were sent to the Teheria death camp in Celje. The camp operated for about 2 months. Thousands were executed here, but most people were taken to secret mass graves elsewhere and murdered there. My 2 teenage uncles were brought here to Teheria. They were not executed due to their age, but were allowed to catch typhoid, which nearly killed them. Today, Teheria is a memorial to the thousands of people who were executed here and still have not been identified. Some of the captives were taken here to the Barbara mine pit, known as Hudayama. In 2009, 1,450 victims were discovered inside the mine shafts here behind 11 barriers of concrete. Although over 800 mass graves have now been discovered in Slovenia, there are more that have not been discovered.